promised, we're going to make a stab at talking about a woodlot management plan. This is ours, and try to make it as unboring as possible, and not do it as a kind of educational lecture, more as a sharing what we've learned by doing our own with our forester, and how helpful it can be as a document.
You want me to say something, right?
Sure.
Oh, goody.
Your laptop.
Well, as we get into this project, 10, 11 years ago, and reflecting back, I still think of J.B. Simpson's book, Restoring the Acadian Forest. It's kind of the Bible. It's how I got religion about the Acadian Forest. It gives you the history, the perspective, and in broad terms, what can be done to help restore these degraded woodlots. The management plan, I think, is more like the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not clear cut, stand 3. Stand 1, which for us, and we can perhaps show a clip, is our alders, abandoned field. Recovering field coming up in alders and so on. So with it, management plan says, natural succession in this stand will occur slowly over time.
Like 50 years.
This stand was unique to the woodlot as it provided good early succession habitat for a variety of wildlife species. So in other words, it says we're just going to leave it and let it gradually
and let nature take care of that
succeed into.
So okay, but can we back up a little?
Oh, sure.
As to the why you should bother taking the time to do a woodlot management plan at all. And they can be a very formal document like ours, being done with the help of a forester, and doing great detail. But they don't have to be. They can be much more informal depending on what you want from your woodlot, and that's a large piece of the whole purpose of doing the woodlot management plan, is to start with a little thought about what is it you want for your woodlot. So it's what purpose do you want it to have? Do you want it to just stand out there and be green and grow trees, and you're not going to do anything? Do you want it so that you can go cross-country skiing in the winter, or to take the dog for a walk? Do you want it because you burn wood like we do and need firewood to keep your house warm? Like what do you want to use these acres with trees for? So that's kind of where it starts, is just having an understanding of what you want from the woodlot, and then what do you see it 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 100 years down the road, if you want to go that far.
Oh yes, please.
About how you see it evolving, and what you can do to assist Mother Nature to get from where it is now to where you'd like to see it in the future. Is that?
Yeah, well, you certainly have to start with objectives. If you don't have objectives, then you have no place to go. So the only logical thing you can do is do nothing, or putter around and take a bit of firewood, perhaps. And if what you're planning on is very small scale, you're going to spend an hour or two every second week or something like that, and do a bit of work, you probably don't need certainly a professional management plan. If, however, you're going to do anything on a larger scale, it certainly, to my mind, is absolutely essential that you have professional advice before you do commercial cutting before you do anything that's could really disturb the ecology of your woodlot? Are you planning on bulldozing a road through your property?
Make sure you don't take down the only hemlock.
But also make sure that you're not providing a path for erosion to erode that road and dump it right into what could be a pristine brook or lake or something, right? So when you start to get into that kind of scale, whether you need a management plan in full, you do need professional advice before, you know, embarking on something that is a significant disturbance to your property.
When we came, and I grew up on this property, so, but had lived away.
Not very tall.
No, unfortunately not. So when we moved back onto the land 11 years ago now, we were using it for firewood because we put the wood stove in. And that's our primary, generally only source of winter heat. And within a few months of moving here, we had gotten a black lab pup, Jet. So we walked basically the wood roads, the old wood roads that had been here every day with Jet. And then in the winter we snowshoed. He didn't get to, he had to slog through. So we were using it for kind of firewood and just our own recreational enjoyment.
Yep.
And then of course Michael read Jamie Simpson's book about restoring the Acadian forest and started to take a different point of view on what was until then just a bunch of trees that were conveniently adjacent to our home.
Yep.
So that's when the vision started, and it wasn't that far into our, after we had come here, but it has been very helpful to get a clearer picture of what we want and how we can help the woodlot get there.
Yeah. No, I mean, we moved here in April of 2009. Our first management report was done in June of 2012, and we certainly had conversations and were changing our whole thinking about the woodlot before we ever even started that. So in 2012, we had a very clear vision of what we wanted to do.
And that was probably a couple of years in the making, I guess.
Yeah, and so we've just actually done a new management plan at the end of 2018.
Last year? No, 2018. Yeah, December 2018 this is.
Right. Because of the significant work that had been done in terms of road construction, commercial harvesting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it was time that the value of that plan, virtually everything that had been planned was done. And it was time to now create the next part of the vision. And again, none of this is cast in stone, it's in print. But at any time, you can always say, no, we want to change the direction that we're heading in. Although, in a sense, it's the commandments, basically, there's not a lot of punishment if you want to be a sinner and not follow it.
I'm not touching that.
Thank you.
Michael made mention a couple times about stand 1, stand 3, stand whatever, and we do have, this is, I don't know if this is Google Maps or something specific that the local forestry department uses for theirs, but basically it's a satellite image and then the property superimposed over top of it. Our house sits here, so of course it's just numbered through. And so stand 1 is the recovering farmland. Dividing things up into stands is, with property, we're a little over 150 acres, is convenient because you do get differences throughout the woodlot. It's not a plantation. It's you know, it's a natural woodlot that had been logged over at various times. So there are different trees in different locations, different environmental conditions, so each one needs its own sort of way to approach it. If you have a smaller woodlot, or if it's all very similar, you know, that may not be necessary, but it is certainly helpful for our purposes at least to have, okay, this is this stand and this is what needs to be done, and over here is this stand and it could use this, and it gives you an opportunity to set some priorities over what is more in need of help versus what can be left alone for a few years or a number of years and let Mother Nature take care of.
To go back to where I think we should be.
Sorry.
It's all right. I'm used to jumping around. Now again, we're talking a fairly formal management plan. One of the first things that is usually done is assess your boundary lines. Are they there? Are they intact? What condition they're in? And basically make any recommendations that may be required to deal with any deficiencies. Number two, if you're planning on any significant commercial activity, or even, you know, opening up ski trails, snowmobile trails to the public, access to your woodlot, in other words, roads, trails, stream crossings, whatever, need to be looked at in terms of what's needed to meet your objectives. And then, once you have the basic infrastructure, your boundary lines and your roads dealt with, then you look at your stands, because now you have an opportunity to actually, once your roads and boundary lines, is to go in there and actually work. And if you don't have access or you don't have boundary lines, then you shouldn't be in there working anyhow. So to just cover the general basics of what a stand report looks like. In our instance, and these are going to be fairly common, I think, across most professional organizations. It talks maybe a bit about the history of the stand, and then tells you what is in the overstory of that stand. In other words, the overstory are those trees that are way up there at the top of the stand level, and it'll give you the composition of that stand in terms of, let's take an example, stand 2 on our property, white birch 20%, white ash 20%, white spruce 20%, red maple 10%, gray birch 10, balsam fir 10, yellow birch 5, cedar 5. Again, I would caution you, this is volume. I was really annoyed with our first management, not report, management plan, because I was reading, you know, this stand has, you know, 20% fir content, and I would go out and I would see fir, 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 white birch, you know, white ash, fir, 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 and I'm thinking, is this forester blind? Foresters talk volume.
Not the number of trees.
You have one big birch. In fact, they don't even count anything under, I think it's 4 inches. That doesn't even count in them as a commercial species. So this is about commercial volume that you have. So all those little bitty, you know, 2-inch fir trees or 3-inch fir trees, they're not counting those at all. So we normal human beings see stems, you know, little trees or big trees or whatever. Foresters get a little twisted in their education. They see volume. They see cords of wood or cubic meters or whatever.
Which may have been no interest whatsoever to you if you're not looking to do any kind of commercial cut. I mean, this is your document, and it's to help you. So if you're creating your own, and if you want to do it as, you know, by type of tree that you're seeing out there,
Yep.
feel free, right? Like, don't be out there trying to, okay, this big tree, so how many little trees go in to make up that? No. That's not what you need. You're just looking to get an overall picture of what it looks like today, so that then you can make some decisions on where you want to go to make it look different if you do.
So in addition to doing that, I mean, it gives you a little report of what's been going on, et cetera, you know, that we've been underplanting white hemlock or white pine and hemlock. Page 2 for us is talks about the understory. That's kind of the stuff that's much lower down to the ground. The species composition again, the general height, what kind of, you know, non-commercial species. We have speckled alders, mountain ash, serviceberry, beaked hazelnut, wild raisin, blueberry, and various fern species. Most of which of those I can't even actually go out and identify them within the woodlot, but especially in certain cases it could be valuable to know. And it talks about the soil conditions and the slope of the land, and then it talks about you know, any streams that have to have a setback. And then again, it finishes that page with kind of a continue partial harvesting, which is basically what I've been doing myself. So basically the report is saying we continue this on for the foreseeable future. Yeah, so then the report gives you a summary of the activities it's recommending. So just very quickly in our report, finish up boundary line work by 2019, continue partial harvesting between 2019 and 2021, etc., etc. So it gives you timelines and so on in terms of what things, you know, should happen.
On the sort of priority.
Yeah, and one of the things that this also does with our forester, it highlights those activities for which there may be financial assistance, which is always good to know.
Good information to have.
Exactly.
There is all kinds of material, of course, available on the internet. There is Forest Connect had, what's the name of that webinar? Best practices on a small wooded acreage. So best practices on a small wooded acreage from Forest Connect that gave you a pretty good overview of kind of the things to look at and the things to consider if you're doing your own. And I know the Nova Scotia Forestry Department, whatever it's called, has a pretty good guideline there too as well, that you can kind of question and answer follow through as to help clarify your own thinking as to what you want to accomplish in your woodlot.
Yep. And certainly if you think of woodlot owners who might benefit you know, from this video, by all means please share, like, subscribe, and we'd love your comments if you think we're missing out on anything.
And any questions, so feel free.
Yep.
Okay. Stay well, guys. See you next time.
Keep safe.